Track and Control is one of my favourite Piggy build mode series, but it turns out that the next chapter in the series is gonna be the last episode. And what better way to celebrate the series by making multiple videos explaining it? So, in this video, I'm gonna go over Season 1 of Track and Control. Chapter 1. The beginning of the journey to find Grandmother. Jam hears that Grandmother went to a laboratory, so him and Georgie go to investigate. But suddenly, him and Georgie get knocked out by a mysterious being. Fortunately, they were able to escape the infected that knocked them out. But unfortunately, Grandmother was not there. But then suddenly, Mr. P comes out of nowhere and pushes them into the sewers. Chapter 2. Continuing right after Chapter 1, Jam and Georgie fall in the sewers. So without much hesitation, they decide to escape the sewers. So they eventually find a ladder to the surface, and then they realize that Grandmother is a judge, so she works at a courthouse, which is basically where they go in the next chapter. Anyway, Chapter 3. Finally, after a 15-minute car ride, Jam and Georgie arrive at the courthouse. But when they enter the courthouse, they don't find Grandmother. Instead, they meet Zizzy. And it turns out that Grandmother isn't there. And to make things worse, they have trouble that followed them all the way there. And it also turns out that the car is broken. Anyway, they deal with the infected and fix the car up eventually. Zizzy assumes that Grandmother went to the park, so they go there. Anyway, Chapter 4. Jam, Georgie, and Zizzy arrive at the park. But instead of finding Grandmother, they find Pony. Pony says that Grandmother was there, but unfortunately, she left before the three arrived. But suddenly, it turns out that they were followed by one of Mr. P's henchmen. Anyway, after they deal with that henchman, they eventually get some supplies and decide to go to the power plant. Anyway, Chapter 5. Jam, Zizzy, Pony, and Georgie finally arrive at the power plant. But right off the bat, they get confronted by none other than Mr. P, who kidnaps Grandmother in the park and turned her into one of his henchmen. Jam tries to save Grandmother and stop Mr. P, but then eventually, Mr. P overpowers them and takes them against their own will into the plant. But before Mr. P can interrogate them, what I assume is something like a reactor core or something like that, basically explodes. So Mr. P kidnaps Zizzy and escapes. But before the three can save Zizzy, they decide to call for backup. Anyway, Chapter 6. Jam, Pony, and Georgie eventually arrive in a haunted forest. So Jam goes through the forest, and they eventually find the house that they were looking for. And once they get inside of the house, they meet Bunny. So, it also turns out that Bunny has a brother, which is Doggy. But it turns out that Doggy is out buying groceries. Meanwhile, Georgie gets kidnapped by his own grandmother. And because they heard Georgie get kidnapped, they follow after them. Anyway, Chapter 7. After chasing down Grandmother, they are led to an alleyway. And after searching around this alleyway, they finally catch up to them. But Grandmother is missing. And that's because in a flashback, she just up and left. And because the group has no idea where she went, Bunny decides that they should go meet Doggy at the farmer's market. Chapter 8. So the group arrives at where the farmer's market is, but suddenly they hear a loud scream, which for some reason they assume is Zizzy, despite Zizzy being captured by Mr. P, which Mr. P's base is not around there. Anyway, while investigating, they eventually find Doggy, and they escape. And after who they were chasing got away, and some trust issues that were short-lived with Doggy, Doggy tells them that they're going to a cold storage facility, which is where they go to in the next chapter. Anyway, Chapter 9. Jam, Georgie, Doggy, Pony, and Bunny finally arrive at the facility. Anyways, Jam explores the facility, and the usual shenanigans that happen in gameplays happen. But after escaping the facility, they're still basically out of luck because the people that they were chasing got away. But it turns out that they went to a factory, which is Mr. P's base. So they go there. Anyways, Chapter 10, also known as the final chapter. So, the group finally arrives at the factory. And after some exploring around the factory, they finally find Zizzy. But they don't see Grandmother. But Zizzy tells them that Grandmother is handling Mr. P and that they're safe now. Or so they thought because Mr. P confronts them. And Mr. P shoots Pony killing him. And right after that, Grandmother knocks out Mr. P, defeating Mr. P. And right after burying Pony, the group go their separate ways. But that is for now.